Everyone, welcome back to the workshop. And you may have caught the other day, I posted a video about these Halloween luminaries and a little bit of design work with them. So after making them, my wife, who works at the campus store at the college, asked if maybe she could take some in for dressing up the store for the month of October. And I said, sure, but let me do one better. Let's make a little more variety. So I'm going to do another version of this. It's kind of a mixture between a Tealight, but also make it into more of a jack-o'-lantern with a little less squarish look. So I'm going to do that. We're also going to be cutting this out on the xTool P2. I'll be talking a little bit about some of the advantages of using a CO2 laser. So if you're curious about what I make and want to see this machine in action, stay tuned. I'm going to jump right into it. All right, so I did a lot of this in SketchUp. I started out with a simple vector trace of a pumpkin outline. Wanted something that, had the kind of a more little whimsical stem and such. You could have made this a little more blocky. This may end up a little fragile, but we'll see when we cut it out. But the inside is just basically a box. You could actually start with a box generator, get those dimensions in, and then just bring in your panels front and back to figure out the size. But then at the back, I left the stem off just to kind of simplify things a little bit. I don't know, we'll see. That might enhance or detract from the image. So the idea here is in this center section, we can then add in a like a jack-o'-lantern face and such. So with that, I will get our parts cut out here. I've kind of laid them out flat in this view. So really just 5 simple parts here. We've got the notches. So at this point, I can export this and bring it into the application of choice. So when working with the P2, I'm actually going to be doing this in XCS. So let's jump over there. All right, so we're here in xTool Creative Space, and this is the latest version. You can go ahead and check that going up here to the X menu, settings, and then we're going to jump down to about XCS. So you see we're running version 2.1.12, which at the time of this recording is the latest version. They have moved a few things around, so if you're running on an older version and you're trying to follow along with some of this stuff, things may look a little different. Let's go ahead. We're working with the P2. I've already got a sheet of 3mm or about 1/8 inch Baltic birch loaded in there. We're going to go ahead and import our design. So we're going to click up on this image icon, and I've got my Halloween folder. So we're going to go ahead and grab our lantern from SketchUp. Now, if it gives you a warning, depending on your workspace, that it's bigger than the work area, do you want to scale it? Say no, because that's going to throw off your sizes. And so what we have here, let me get this down out of that area so we can see this better. Here we have the design. So I went ahead and have included my my faces from previous video. You know, you've got some typical jack-o'-lantern faces. You can draw these up yourself. You can also find them online in vectors, however you want to do it, or you can throw your own object in there. And then I also took the overall cut file, arranged it so this will fit. This is just a little over 10 inches square, so a 12 by 12 sheet of plywood will work for this. So this will also work on most diode lasers as well that have a smaller working area. And another thing that I did was I took these 2 parts here. Well, it's kind of jumping in, but I took these 2 parts here and put them together so they share this common line here. It kind of disappears when I highlight it, but that middle line there, just off of here, is just a way to save on cutting time. If you can cut one line or 2 sides with one line, it's just going to cut down on the overall job operation. So the idea here is we're going to cut front and back. We're going to cut our box out, and we will drop a face in. But one thing I want to play with first, and I'm going to go ahead and ungroup these, and it'll make it a little bit easier. I do want to make sure things are combined that should be. So we'll see here like the inside part of this little vine section is not combined. It's probably going to be okay, but I want to go ahead and combine them. So I'm going to select those 2, and I'm going to come up here to the subtract at overlap, and that will just basically remove this loop from this inside chunk and make that one object. Just makes it a little bit easier for file optimization. Now, the other thing I may want to do is actually group these slots together. I could do both of them, but individually. And so the reason I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to set these up as slightly different cut operations. And that way we can play around with kerf. So real quickly, what kerf is, you have a line that it's following, the laser beam is following dead on that line, but imagine that line is really thin and the beam is this wide. So you're gonna have half the beam on the inside of the line, half the beam on the outside. And if you're cutting to dimension, it's gonna be cutting half that beam into your object. And so it's actually gonna cut it just a small bit wider or smaller than you anticipated. So it's good to use the kerf offset option. You take half that beam and you tell it, I want you to cut inside of the line or outside of the line. That way you get a perfect fit. So this is why I'm grouping these together. I'm going to go ahead, I've grouped those. I'm going to select these as well. So I'm just holding shift while clicking on each of these items, and I clicked on the wrong item. So start over. Holding down shift, going to click, wait till they're highlighted. Make sure we're grabbing the right ones. There we go. There we go. There we go. Right clicking and grouping, or Control G would do that as well. So now what I can do is I can select this one and I can select this one, and we can change our parameters. Now I've already done my material test with this. I know that for this P2 and this material, what speeds I can run. So I'm going to select cut over here. I'm going to take my power up to 90%, and I'm going to put the speed at 30 millimeters a second. So that'll be our cutout. But here's where we want to play with the kerf offset. And you can see there, they give a little bit of a description on it. I'm going to turn this on, and we want to bring a compensated width, and we want to bring it in. So I'm going to slide it in this way. And I know that about 0.07 is about the kerf that I need to make these parts fit just snug, but not too tight. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And you can do that on the outside of these objects as well. Just know that you're going to need a solid object. So the way these are, it might not work. So I might have to play to see if I can combine those two. But I think having the kerf on just one of the items is going to get us close enough. If you want a perfect fit, if you're doing inlays, you're going to definitely want to do that kerf offset on both items. So we've got that set up. Then we can also select these items. We can go ahead and select all these as well. Here again, we want to set up our cut. Again, 90% power, 30, and we'll leave the kerf the same. I'm not worried about it on the outside of these objects for now. And like I say, I can't, see, it's not even optioned there because it's not seeing it as a solid object. It's actually seeing this as a loop, and then third line. So at this point, we need to pick the face that we're going to go with. You know, I've got these set up. As a matter of fact, I probably want to group each of these individual ones just so they don't get messed up. So I'm just highlighting them and using Control G to group them. See, now I can select them as such. And we're going to bring it over to the item that we want to cut it out. So let's go ahead. This is a little more traditional one. And we can place it in here. That's going to be, while it'll look good on the pumpkin that size, it's going to show a lot of the candle. So I may just scale this down just a little bit, and then bring it more towards the top. This is definitely a what looks best to you, but you just got to remember you got to keep it inside of these boxes that's going to get to the outside. So if we want it to glow, we're going to go with that. So that all looks good. I can now bring this together and drag it up onto. Now I see I've got a little biscuit thing here, so I want to avoid that. And but I can grab these two, probably bring them over here, not to waste that material. But I want to avoid this little biscuit thing in the plywood. And of course, we want to use our measurements so that it knows the thickness of the material. So we're going to come up here to aim to measure. We'll just kind of bring it to the center of those items. That's going to move the P2 over with the camera, take a really good reading of that. And you'll see it is measuring it at 0.156. That might be a little thick, so you can also measure it yourself, but also consider if there's any gap between the honeycomb or the rails. It is basically judging where it thinks the base should be to the top of that material. All right, so we've got all that. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead just to save material. We're going to rotate this. I'm going to hold down shift. That kind of locks it into the various degree movements. And we'll put this right there. This is taking up, actually this said, there we go. It could still fit on. We've got just under 12 inches wide and just over 10 inches tall. So again, this would fit onto a diode laser. Want to double check our parameters. It looks like these we need to adjust yet. So it's always good to check that. They give you some warning error items that it might be off. So we're going to go ahead and modify these parameters. Again, 90, 30. That is good. And then for the face, matter of fact, let's just unselect those, make sure it's not trying to output those. And then for this face one, again, same thing. We want this at 30 or 90 for the power, 30 for the speed, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit process on this. We'll jump over to the xTool and we'll get this burned. So I've got the parts cut out and worked fairly well, running the xTool P2 at 30 millimeters a second and 100 or 90% power. Now, this is the original P2 and it does have built-in air assist, but as you see on the front end, just where it kind of starts and stops, we're getting just a little bit of that scorching effect. And then of course on the back side, this one's not too bad, but you'll see on this back piece, we do have some flashback from the honeycomb. Now that can be prevented a little bit with some maintenance and cleaning. But the xTool has recently announced their new P2S, and it's supposed to have a better air assist in it with twice the airflow in it. So that's one thing that if you're looking at these lasers, I think looking at the P2S is definitely going to help you cut down on a little bit less of this scorching on the top side. And then the back side, just got to keep that honeycomb clean. But without having that on hand, using this one, still having fairly clean cuts, I'm just going to use a small sandpaper block. This has some 180 grit. We'll be able to clean these up really quick. Now, one of the things I like about using the CO2 laser is the efficiency of the cut. I know a lot of people complain about diodes with the multiple passes they might have to take on wood. That lingering beam does add a little more charring, and if you can see on this one, this is what we get with the CO2. Speed's dialed in, just a nice brown caramelization. There's no, black soot rubbing off on my fingers. And so when doing a lot of cutting, this is one of the advantages to a CO2 laser. I'm gonna get these pieces sanded down, cleaned up, and we will double check, make sure my kerf settings are right, make sure these fit are snug, and then we'll glue them up and see how it looks. Right, the pieces are cleaned up, and we're going to go ahead and get these assembled. So I'm going to make sure we're using the right faces. This is, technically they're a bit reversible. You just want to get them the right direction, but this will be our front. And so, like I say, we want to check our kerf, and yeah, there we go. That's a nice fit. I didn't have to push too hard, but it's holding it in there nice and strong, and it will come out, but it's not too loose. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this up. I've got some Starbond thick CA. I'll put beads along the edges. We'll push this down, and then if we need to, we'll hit it with some accelerator. So let's go ahead and do that. We got it all assembled. The fit was nice, so seemed to have my kerf right on. Now, you want to definitely test that, and you also want to double check the thickness of your material, because if you set up the file for 1/8" material, but it's a little bit bigger or smaller, that will throw that off as well. But this looks okay. I think this would work. Very simplistic. You could paint it and kind of cover some of this stuff up, but I think we can take this up just another notch and dress up this front face a little bit more. It's going to take a little bit more material, but I'm going to laminate this and also maybe play around with a little diffusing layer in the middle. So let's jump back into the software and take a look at my thoughts there. All right, we're back here in xTool Creative Space, and I'm going to jump over to a new project because I did a little prep work on this, but I'll just show you what I've added. So here's the same file. The base file is over on this side. But what I did was went ahead and took this outline and made a copy of it, and but then took out. I'm going to ungroup this, and we want to basically take out all of these little boxes for the slots for the tabs, because we are just going to use this as a solid front piece. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that is grouped again. And then just to dress it up a little bit, wanted to add kind of the lines that would be forming that shape of the pumpkin. So went ahead and drew in some arcs, did some node editing to kind of smooth them out, as you can see here. And it just gives us a little more definition to this, but leaves that center area open for our artwork or our face. So we want those to be score lines. So I've left all the other things about the same. And here we have a score. We're going to run it 35 power, 125 millimeters a second. We're just looking to make that line dark. You could fill this in if you want, but that's going to take more time. I think the score lines are going to do the job. Now comes the tricky part. What we need to do is, we can go ahead and get rid of this, but what we need to do is we're going to group these up. We want them to stay together because we're going to need to be able to drop our face in the same spot on both of these. So just for practice, I'm going to grab a copy of that one, and same thing here, just in case we screw this up, we can kind of edit them. And first things I'm going to do is get these both lined up. So you can have them here. What you want to do is just select them both, and then you can use your alignment tools. You can align center. So we do that, and now they're both perfectly lined up, overlapping each other. And we can come pick the face. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our kind of pointy-eyed one, bring this down here, get it in position right, and you know, I might scale that back just a little bit. I can do that without messing up the other items. And we'll put that right about there. It's going to have our face in there on both copies. Now we need to basically pull these apart. So what I'm going to do is grab that face, hold down Shift, and grab that. Control C, Control V, and now we have the pumpkin, the flat one with the face in. And then if we just come over here, highlight over our orange stripes, since that's grouped together, we can delete that. And now we have the back one with the face in it, and they're both aligned. You want to, at this point, probably group these as well. So Control G will group that together. Same thing here, Control G. Now you can move these around, and you're not going to move those faces. They're going to be in alignment when we go to glue them together. So now that we didn't mess anything up, we can come up here, get rid of that one, move this into its place, like so. Same thing over here. We can get rid of this one, move this into its place, and then we can move them all back up onto our material, double check our focus and positioning, double check our power and speeds. Like I said, we're going to be doing the 30 millimeters a second for everything here, and then 125 millimeters a second and about 30% power for that score. Other than that, it's going to be the same. So let's get this cut out, and then I'll show you the other piece I'm going to use for the kind of a diffuser in there as well. All the parts cut out nicely. Again, we just have a little bit of kind of overburn there, a little bit of staining. Also, it's a little bit of flashback from the honeycomb. So I'm going to get these sanded up quick. We'll glue up the main box, but then we'll look at what we're going to do with our front piece after this is all assembled. All right, so I have the second one cut out, and we also have the face. And the idea is we can just simply laminate this on the front, and it will hide those slots and the tabs. And we have the extra little decoration of the pumpkin, kind of the little stripes that make the more of the pumpkin shape. But I also want to try to see if we can add in a little bit of diffuser here. You're going to be able to see the the LED candle and such. And I think if we add a little bit of diffusing in there, it'll just maybe bring it up an extra notch. So to do that, I'm just going to be simply using some tracing paper. This is something you can pick up at most craft stores, drawing stores, otherwise online. And it's just very thin. It's somewhat translucent. So the closer you get to it, the more you can see. And so you can put one layer, or if you think that's not diffused enough, you can do 2 layers, and you'll see the kind of the difference there. And we're just going to cut a square of this. We'll glue it in between those layers and see how that looks. So let's get that part laminated and glued up, and some of this in there as a diffuser. All right, now with the CO2 laser, we could even custom cut this to shape, but we really just need to cover this space. So I'm going to do something that's about maybe 2 3/4 inches square. I think that should do all right. So let's just get that kind of marked out here. There we go. I think that's the amount of diffusion I want. So I'll move this out of the way. And now I'm going to need to laminate these two. So I'm going to apply some glue and then clamp them together. So clothespins can make really good clamps for smaller items. I do have a couple of regular clamps if I need it. But we're going to just kind of work with that in place. We're going to go ahead and apply some glue. Just want to be careful not to get too much in these thin areas, because it will squeeze out, and then you got to clean that up a little bit if you're a perfectionist like some of us are. But we're going to get a bit of a border, get a little bit across the paper, but not get it where it's going to interfere with the openings. That'll just kind of hold it in place. And that should be good enough for this. You could also use wood glue. It just takes a little bit longer to set up. And let's get this in place. With CA glue, you do need to move kind of quickly, because it will start curing. I like this thicker stuff. It does take a little bit longer to cure. But then I'm going to use these up here on these thinner parts. Just kind of get them in alignment. And then we'll clamp there, clamp here. That should hold it. We'll give this just a few minutes to cure. All right, so here we have it. We have the one with the diffuse in there, and you kind of see it just frosts that inside, as well as the one that's just open. Now I do have some Tealight candles in here. It's obviously way too bright because I've got my lights on in here. So let's go ahead and we'll turn the lights down. We'll take a look at them, see how they're glowing in a little less light. So anyway, hopefully that you were able to see the differences between the diffused and the open. And then of course we have the one where we don't have the front face on it. All this is personal preference of what you're going for. If you want it inexpensive, you're going to paint it up. Maybe you don't mind so much having those tabs showing through versus dressing it up with a second layer. Just part of the fun of playing around with our lasers and our designs. So hopefully this is inspiring for you. I went ahead and also created this one that has the college logo and the name on there. So I'm going to let my wife take these in and see if they want to decorate up for the month of October. And yeah, so Halloween is upon us. Figured a lot of people like to decorate. These might be some good ideas for you to be able to offer to your friends and family or your clients. So if you're interested in that, I will have a link to my Etsy shop with these files down below. Always appreciate that support. And if you do play around with them, let me know how it goes. Let me know what you think, and maybe the special designs you throw on them as well. So again, just another project video to hopefully inspire you to play around with and do more with your lasers. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave those down below. If you like this, hit that like button. And if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button. I do mix up various machines, tips, tricks, reviews, along with these projects and other tutorial type things to be able to use your lasers, CNCs, 3D printers better. So if that's something that interests you, would love to have you around, and always appreciate the support. So we're going to wrap that up. Again, thank you for watching this. I appreciate you being here, but most importantly, I hope you can go out to your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.